Welcome! What's the matter? Not as dark as you expected. It's never as dark as they expect it to be. Hot though, right? Of course it's hot. Just look at all the fire. We needed to bump up the amount of flames around this place after Dante's poem got so damn popular. Trouble is that everyone expects it to be dark and fiery at the same time. Doesn't make much sense, does it? Most people seem well aware that the key source of light in your solar system is made entirely of flames and fuel, yet they expect this place to be both a lake of fire and dark at the same time. Oh, I'm sorry. I seem to have gotten a bit off track there. I hope you don't mind. You see, we have tons of work to do around here, but given that we have infinite time to get it done, most people aren't in much of a rush. What's that, you say? The devil? It never ceases to amuse me how often people confuse me for the devil. You really want to get into the semantics of it, you could accurately call me a devil, but that definite article makes a serious distinction around here, so no, I am not the devil. I prefer to be called a demon, and my name is Curtis. I've been assigned to get you settled in here and make sure you don't get yourself in any more trouble now that you're down here with all the troublemakers. You're already breaking rule number 1 with your blatant rudeness. It would do you some good to stop gawking at me like that. What's wrong? I don't fit your expectation for what a demon is supposed to look like? I guess you expect some anthropomorphic goat figure with red skin, tufts of black hair, horns, and a pointy tail, right? You know, a lot of you dead Americans are just too married to your preconceived notions. We're a lot more progressive than that here in hell, which includes it being perfectly acceptable for a demon to be a well-spoken Hispanic man wearing a slick black suit, like this one. You see, this is why the main man doesn't greet you crude, unworthy souls upon arrival. You don't know how to conduct yourselves yet. You're sloppy and unrefined. This is not heaven where you're practically lobotomized upon arrival and spend the rest of eternity endlessly serving and inflating the confidence of that self-righteous egomaniac on the throne. Of course, the pleasant thing about heaven is that while we've gone to great lengths to ensure that you break a sweat during this process, hence all the flames, they don't have any sun or uncomfortable heat there. I've always thought the man upstairs was committing highway robbery with that deal, but hey, if people want to trade an eternity of servitude for basic air conditioning, that's their prerogative. Then of course there are blokes like you. You boldly chose the alternative location and are in desperate need of a rules briefing before you can enter his kingdom of darkness. So have a seat and get as comfortable as you can with incessant flames licking at your neck. The devil himself has several firm rules that you need to truly wrap your mind around before we can let you in. Until you can do that, you're stuck here in the admissions room. Or if it gets crowded, we can ship you over to purgatory for a few decades while you gather your thoughts before trying again. For the most part, though, people with a decent attention span tend to grasp these rules upon a first reading. You seem to have a stable enough head on your shoulders to manage that, so cut me a break here, make my job a little easier, and pay attention the first time. Sound good? The devil's a lot less patient than I am, so you should probably take a few notes to ensure you don't break any of his 5 rules in his kingdom, especially when he's watching. Rule number 1, mind your manners. As I mentioned earlier, you already struggled with this one. Gawking at someone is rather rude, even if you did just die. It's not like your death was any more jarring and distraught than the average force ejection from the mortal plane. Why, just last week I worked with a gentleman whose demise was far more gruesome than yours, and he was a picture of proper manners. Don't think this is the only time your excuses won't be tolerated either. The devil is tough but fair, and he has a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to excuses. He expects complete accountability from every one of your actions and inactions without exception. Maybe back in life you were comfortable with passing on your responsibilities by assuring yourself that as long as you were devoutly religious you could do whatever you wanted and God would forgive the rest. Well, down here you're the only one who can account for your own actions. It doesn't make any damn sense that it's fair for anyone else to forgive you for them either, except for the people by whom you do wrong. I know that's not an easy pill to swallow, but that's the red pill for you, and if you ask me, it's way better than being plugged into the heavenly matrix, praising and serving for the rest of your afterlife. For whatever combinations, however, you got yourself sent to hell, and in hell, you're the one who's accountable for what you say and do. Don't go blaming or praising me, Satan, God, or anyone else for it. Just you. So like I was saying, proper manners are essential. I'm not talking about bullshit like not mixing up your dinner fork and salad fork either. That's etiquette. There's a huge difference between etiquette and manners. Etiquette is for tennis players and rich people who have time to quibble over silly nuances like taking your hat off when you walk into a building, or if you should write Miss or Ms. or Madame on a wedding invitation. If you can't tell so far, we have no patience for pettiness here, despite the fact that we obviously have time for it. The rules here are clear and simple, even if they do require enough explanation to puncture even the thickest of skulls. It doesn't take wealth, extensive time, or even a ritzy upbringing to be polite. So when you meet someone new here, introduce yourself. Speak clearly. Don't stare like you've never seen anything or anyone like them before, even if you haven't. Learn a few phrases as you interact with those other lost souls during your eternal stay. Please, thank you, pardon me. You don't have to be one of those eternal bootlickers inside the pearly gates in order to add a word or two to the occasional sentence that shows you've gone a touch out of your way to be cordial. It wouldn't kill you to hold a door open every now and then either. When you meet the boss man, look him in the eye. Treat him like an equal who's worthy of your respect, and he'll do the same for you. Don't cross the line from polite into pathetic. He absolutely hates ass-kissing. He knows you're just doing it to win over the benefits of his favor, and the fact that you think that it will work means he knows you think he doesn't realize that, which is insulting to his intelligence. If you wanted to constantly grovel to someone with more ego than intelligence, you should have went to heaven. It's too late for that now, of course, so just learn to be polite without being a brown-noser. Simple enough? Good. Rule number 2. Commit no acts of prejudice. Now that you understand the inherent flaws of the rudeness that your staring habit exhibited, I suppose we should address the deeper issue of that recent offense. Naturally, I'm referring to the clear prejudice undertones that your facial expression showed for how you expected a demon to look. Let me make it abundantly clear to you once again that it's not my job to fit your mind stereotype for how a demon is supposed to look, sound, or behave. Meanwhile, the only remarks I've made about you are based on your behaviors and what I've observed. I never would have uttered that little jab about Americans and their preconceived notions had you not given me a reason to do so. It makes so much more sense to react to the misbehaviors of others than to, as we say down here, preact in response to a behavior that hasn't yet occurred. Don't you think? Satan surely does. You see, it's like I said before, we have an eternity to get things done down here, but there is a lot of shit to do. So we've learned to give others the opportunity to show who they are, then judge them accordingly, rather than relying on uninformed assumptions. You see, Old Scratch is an open-minded fellow. While the Sky Wizard was up there ordering the Israelites to fight, exterminate, and never intermarry with the people of other nations, the devil was down here partying with sinners of every race and religion you can imagine, laughing with the ancient Greeks about things like Helios, using a chariot to drag the sun around, and with ancient Egyptians about believing in the chaotic legends of Seth. Hindsight can be a great source of comedy, especially when you've got a couple centuries of it under your belt. Anyway, Satan was having lighthearted laughs with all those formerly unenlightened suckers without a thought in the world about their racial demographics, worldly social status, sexual orientations, or gender identities. To him, you're all just lost souls no matter how you look, where you're born, who you find attractive, or how or where you died. Everyone gets a fair shake. People don't often look at it this way, but hell's a remarkably accepting and inclusive place. Heaven's more of a homogeneous, exclusive place. Satan loves diversity and invites people from all walks of life into his kingdom, so long as they can stick to his short set of reasonable rules. I mean, the two rules I've explained to you so far, do either of them sound unreasonable? Now, up in that bright and fluffy, pearly gated community, it's just the opposite. No genuine diversity to be found. So you'd probably be game for suicide if you weren't already dead by the end of the first year, let alone the eternity that follows. My guess is those mindless saps just get numb to the lack of challenge and activity up there, let alone the lack of diversity. What's that? Oh, of course, people of all skin colors get into heaven, but skin color is such a superficial part of what makes people diverse that we higher beings often forget how much mortal attention gets wasted on it. The color of a human skin means no more to us than the color of a cat's fur. That's why we're so tolerant here that prejudice is just one of the few things we don't tolerate. When we talk about prejudice here, we aren't just referring to the bare minimum of avoiding the asinine human tendency to make holistic judgments of people based on their appearances. Committing no acts of prejudice means, by our standards, being authentically and conscientiously open-minded. Like I said, real diversity isn't just about differences in people's appearance, it's about differences in their ideas and the ways they think. Now you're free to judge all you want down here. Beelzebub himself will be the first to cast judgment, and just as a point of pride, he'd never be so hypocritical as Jehovah, issuing commandments that he disregards himself. So judgment is fine in his kingdom. Just none of this prejudgment nonsense. We love tearing one another's opinions to shreds around here, but that actually requires having a comprehensive understanding of the nuances of someone's opinion. You don't just hear a single word by which they introduce or identify themselves and start ranting about how wrong they are based on your oversimplified preconceived notions of that position. That leads to straw man arguments, which are hollow, self-ascribed victories for the people who make them, and frustrating nonsense for those receiving them. Worst of all, they're unconvincing and unentertaining for the fence-sitting spectators. So do yourself and all of us a favor. If you're going to rant at, argue with, or just plain hate someone down here, just have the common courtesy to really get to know and understand what it is about them that you dislike. Can you handle that? Excellent. Rule number 3, be honest. Obviously, it may sound hypocritical to you for a beastly figure known by some as the father of lies, but the devil actually loathes dishonesty. Ironically, most of the negative biblical stories you've probably heard about him are lies themselves, or at least variations of the truth. But that's how propaganda works. If it were fair and honest, it wouldn't be very good propaganda, now would it? This rule is so close to the chest for him because he's the ultimate victim of the greatest deception. Of course, he can see right through anybody lying to him, but the devil is an empathetic being who finds it equally offensive to basic decency for you to tell any meaningful lies to or about anyone else, not just him. We're still cleaning up the mess from last week after Nicole from marketing told Craig in accounting that she really liked him, but she couldn't go out with him because she had a prior engagement. Dishonest bullshit like that is like nails on a chalkboard to the dark one. A white lie, you say? There you go with that obsession over colors again. It doesn't matter how you justify a genuine lie. Of course, there's a clear difference between lying for the sake of a joke, surprise, or magic trick, and lying to someone's face about something deeply personal like how you feel about them, what you know about them, or what your real opinion is about something. See, those are the kinds of disasters waiting to happen on which trite movie plots rely for conflict. If you're asked to share a thought, feeling, or opinion, then either decline sharing it or just tell the damn truth. Whether you realize it or not, so much of the suffering you endured during your life came from multiple groups of people justifying a steady stream of dishonesty that flooded through your mind on a daily basis. Friends, family, politicians, teachers, bosses, restaurant servers, that clerk at the gas station, your mailman, and even complete strangers fed lie after lie into your brain. All the while, Mr. Gray Matter there just soaked in most of it because that dishonesty usually took the path of least resistance. It told you what you wanted to hear in some capacity or another, rather than the uncomfortable realities that set in when people spoke the truth. Lying to make someone more comfortable is vicious, not friendly. You see, comfort itself is often a deceptive, ugly thing. Comfort pacifies, it causes complacency, and it has addictive properties that leave you wanting more of the same. So when someone tells you a comfortable little lie, like they don't notice those extra 15 pounds you've added to your waistline, it makes you feel better, but it makes your behavior worse. You greedily swallow up that lie and that extra piece of cheesecake that you probably would have left on your plate if your friend had the guts to just answer you honestly. Of course, you probably didn't ask hoping for an honest answer. You asked hoping your friend would alleviate the truth from the back of your mind rather than confirm it and pull it to the front where you'd actually have to take some uncomfortable actions towards self-improvement. If you want to stay on the devil's good side, benefit yourself and everyone else around you, embrace honesty when it matters. Presenting a false image of yourself is pointless. Be true to yourself, or you will be ripped to shreds by the many souls here with sensitive bullshit detectors. Accept who you are and don't bother attempting to lie about it. If you're in the process of becoming a better version of yourself, then have the integrity to acknowledge that you're working on it, but admit that you're not there yet. Don't shame yourself for being in the process of improvement. There's too much damn shame back on the mortal coil. People are ashamed of who they are, what they think, what they watch, who they love, what they eat, let alone the shame that they cast on each other for one another's subjective flaws. Have you ever watched a smoking vegan and a poultry-eating triathlete send each other on guilt trips over lifestyle choices? Satan hates that maddening sort of nonsense. Shaming yourself leads to lying to yourself in order to mitigate the shame far more than it leads to self-improvement. Shaming others leads to them lying to themselves, lashing back at you, and or it leads to self-shame of their own far more than it leads to them improving themselves. So if you disagree with someone, then engage in open, honest discourse. Deep arguments of that nature are like sex. They can be passionate, intense, fun, and intimate, but only if they take place within a framework of mutual consent, trust, and honesty. That leads us to rule number 4. I hope you're taking proper notes. Rule number 4. Mind your own damn business. The devil is a daunting public figure who's not afraid to make his presence known, but he's also a very private individual. He believes in keeping to himself and allowing others to do the same. If someone agrees to argue his or her lifestyle with you, it becomes your business to discuss it if you choose to. Otherwise, the thoughts, opinions, and lifestyles of other people are none of your business, and yours are none of anyone else's. The Dark King is something of a fan of Oliver Wendell Holmes in that respect, or whoever it was who had that bit about your liberty to swing your fist, ending where his nose begins. When your actions impact others, you've made it their business to argue and sometimes even interrupt or disrupt it. But if your actions do no harm to others, then nobody has a right to get into your business about them. And you'd best recognize the same about yourself. If you really wanted someone in your business attacking you over your sex life, who you worship, what meat you eat on what day, what kinds of fabrics you wear, on any other kind of trivial matters like that, you should have, again, gone to heaven. But you didn't. Here in hell, the big boss doesn't care about any of that. None of it affects him or anyone else, so why bother people over it? Even with infinite time to waste, the devil can't be bothered to waste his time with micromanaging the minutia of other people's afterlives, and he actually has supreme authority here. When those with no such authority go out of their way to make others miserable over such pettiness, it pisses him off like you wouldn't believe. Your thoughts and desires and other such business are your own. Mine belong to me, the bosses are his. We don't go around condemning people for simply having thoughts here. That's more Jesus' territory. Can you believe having the nerve to accuse a man of adultery just for looking at an attractive woman and wanting to have sex with her? I mean, what kind of absurd rule system is that? When you set the bar on sin so low that just wanting to have sex with a woman counts as bad as actually committing adultery, then you may as well commit adultery if punishment is your main deterrent. If you're deterred from cheating on your spouse by your intrinsic values, like a moral person would be, then you didn't need that threat of punishment in the first place. Damn it, Curtis. There you go again, rambling on about how poorly structured some other set of rules is. I'm sorry about that. I hope you didn't find it confusing. The point is that here in hell, you're welcome to argue and fight with people all you want, as long as they agree to argue and fight with you. If they're keeping to themselves, then leave them alone and you'll be paid the same courtesy. If someone steps out of line and starts harassing you over something that's none of his or her business, or you start doing the same to someone else, the devil will step in, and he's not nearly as gentle as I am, I assure you. Hopefully you're doing an okay job of keeping up so far. Things get a little more nuanced as we move into rule number 5. Rule number 5. Reject the golden rule. The so-called golden rule gets a massive amount of credit for its greatness while being a complete piece of trash. The golden rule only works in a bland, homogeneous environment like heaven, where everyone interacting is essentially the same exclusive little thought club. Everyone there exists for the sole purpose of ego stroking and other ass kissing of the head honcho. They have the same priorities, the same values, the same passion. Otherwise, they wind up here. Anywhere outside of an exclusive social bubble renders the concept of doing unto others as you would have done unto you completely obsolete and frankly counterproductive. The golden rule is built on an assumption that literally every single person you encounter wants to be treated in the same way that you do. It's a wildly popular excuse for not taking the time or effort to properly empathize or just get to know those with whom you interact. It's lazy on a deeply personal level. You humans exist in a world where a couple who love each other can't agree on where to go out to eat every week, and you think the golden rule should be to treat people based on what individuals prefer for themselves? Let's say I'm the kind of person who loves to receive open and honest criticism. Maybe I find it infuriating when a person sees me doing something wrong but doesn't tell me or sugarcoats the criticism that is offered. If I'm the kind of person who thrives in a no-nonsense, straight no-chaser criticism, then the golden rule would have me treating everyone else the same way. It doesn't take too many years of psychology or sensitivity training to recognize that somebody, if not most people, are going to end up getting hurt when I act on my assumption that everybody wants to be treated the same way I do in that respect. Of course, if you reverse the thinking and put on the kid's glove when handling critique for everyone, you enrage somebody like me by failing to mention things I did wrong or using the kind of indirect language that pisses me off. Here in hell, you're dealing with a remarkably diverse population of souls, some of whom are fucking awesome, and some of whom are total assholes. But even those assholes can manage to follow these 5 rules, even if it just means taking an antisocial approach so they don't make other people any more miserable than they have to be. And of course, so they don't invoke the rage of the Dark Master. If you want to get by here, you need to release this concept that the number one rule for treatment of people should be entirely based on just not being a hypocrite. If you actually care about treating people well, then the rule of thumb is simple. Don't treat other people how you want to be treated. Get to know the people with whom you interact and treat them how they want to be treated. Simple enough, right? Any questions about these rules? Take this opportunity to ask any clarifying questions because you will be held accountable for breaking any of these rules. Mind your manners, commit no acts of prejudice, be honest, mind your own damn business, and reject the golden rule. It's only my job to make sure you understand the devil's 5 rules, not enforce them, and I can only let you in if you agree you understand. Otherwise, you sit in this burning hot room for the rest of eternity until you figure it out. Makes no difference to me. I'm not exactly getting paid commission for this job, so do you understand the rules or not? Excellent. I hate having to repeat myself. I just hate it, hate it, hate it. I hate having to repeat myself. Looks like we can let you in now. Turn off the flames. Open the gates. We have a new one who's ready. Entrance. You look surprised. I told you all that fiery presentation was just an aesthetics thing to match the modern popular expectation. It puts people in the mood for introductions, and if you don't give them fire, they start asking a ton of questions instead of just listening to the damn rules. Of course we have fire down here, but it's not the only thing we have. There's even more fire and people getting burned on Earth, but for some reason, people read things like lake of fire and interpret it literally while writing off anything they don't like as just poetic nonsense. Anyway, no, it's not that hot here once you get out of the waiting room. Come on in, get comfortable. Take a cool towel if it'll help you relax from all that heat. It's like I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of the Bible is just propaganda that spins things in God's favor, not to mention what all the people do with it on earth. First of all, God's not omnipotent, omniscient, nor omnipresent, let alone all 3. If he were omnipotent, he could destroy the devil, but he can't. He could obliterate the existence of sin itself, which he also can't, or just doesn't want to. Spoiler alert, he can't. He can't even destroy the devil. If he were omniscient, he'd already know what kind of lives people would live and wouldn't need to wait to see if they became his perfect serf for eternity or not. If he were omnipresent, he'd be in hell, which his book defines as a separation from God. God didn't cast Satan out of heaven into hell. That's just the twist most of you sheep seem content swallowing. Satan escaped from heaven to flee that egomaniacal tyrant. God presents himself as some angelic figure of light and Satan as the agent of evil, then has the nerve to warn the followers in his book that the devil is one of deception. When he fled the clutches of that whitewashed, sterile, cosmic bukkake of praise, Satan assumed control of hell. God created this place for casting aside the vast majority of souls who don't want to worship him their way or fall in line with dispensing eternal praise. There was no management or structure in place, and was nothing but a group of confused souls meandering around in this place of absolute separation. Satan's built it up to a thriving, heterogeneous community strictly governed by 5 simple rules. Don't get me wrong, the devil's pretty much a dictator, but at least he's a consistent, logical, and humble dictator with liberal laws and rigid structure. Your life here won't be too terribly different from the one you had on Earth. It's more free, you can do more, see more, be more than your worldly body allowed. The best thing about this place is the amount of people you get to meet throughout human history. I mean, the infinite time you have to interact with the past, present, and incoming souls. It's great. You're here because you don't fit the mold of what God's looking for. You're not the Kool-Aid drinking Westboro Baptist Church type, so you got sent here. Of course, if you aspire to get another shot, you're always welcome to put in a century or two of ass kissing and beg God to beam you up for a tryout. Satan doesn't care one bit whether you stay or go, but I can assure you there's a much longer line of people who thought they wanted to spend eternity brown-nosing the big man until they realized how terrible the reality of that is, and now want nothing more than to get into the gate through which you just passed. The funny thing is, the people who spent their lives drinking all that self-righteous Kool-Aid seem to have a lot more trouble learning the rules than people like you.